Assalamualaikum and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video we'll be discussing a novel Gravity's Rainbow. It's written by Thomas Pynchon. It's basically a comic and a fiction, but it deals with the World War issues, the Second World War, how it happened, and then major reparations which were paid by Germany. And after that, there's whole a different story of Gravity's Rainbow. Basically, Gravity's Rainbow had not focused a lot on the war. That is why it is even known as a comic fiction. I would try my best to meet up your requirements as this is a very tough novel in the English literature. Many of the videos on Gravity's Rainbow that are uploaded on YouTube are not worth watching because it does not contain the content which was present in the novel. So I believe that I would make you people understand the novel. So let's begin with the author first. Thomas Pynchon is an American author. He is a major novelist in a renowned of his dense and complex novels. His novels tend to cover a vast array of subject matter, genre, and themes. This includes discussion on history, mathematics, science, and music. And even this novel, Gravity's Rainbow, is based on the science. It's a science fiction. The rocket of a V2 that produced to land somewhere, but it couldn't because of the gravities, and it somehow created a rainbow. For Pynchon, it has been said that the Second World War was simply an accelerated incident in an extensive conflict that man fought against nature. He saw the rockets as mere manifestation of the same industrial revolution that had contributed to the destruction of nature. Talking about the background of this novel, so Gravity's Rainbow is a novel written by Thomas Pynchon. The story is centered on several characters that hope to uncover the secret of mysterious device entitled the Black Device, which is slated to be installed in a rocket with a serial number 50. The narrative is set in Europe at the end of the Second World War and the manifests with the framework of the design, production and dispatch of the V2 rocket of the Germany military. It is widely held as one of the major important and difficult work of English literature. Overall, it covers one theme of warfare, paranoia, identity crisis, and capitalist exploitation. Now, another thing we have is the significance of the title. So the title Gravity's Rainbow refers to the arc of the Germany V2 rocket in flight. The Germans used the V2 weapon during World War II. The fuels propel the V2 rocket up and then the gravity pulls it down, creating a curved path. The title covers the V2 rocket path made by the force of the gravity to a rainbow. Therefore, now it is termed as gravity's rainbow. Concept of V2 weapon used by the Germans in the World War II. This novel discusses it all. Okay, so talking about the general plot, the narrative continues numerous threads that are directly and indirectly tied with the secret development of the rocket by the Nazis at the end of the World War. So here the SLOTHROP is the protagonist. Many of the experiments have been made on his personality that has completely destroyed it. Okay, so SLOTHROP is an American working for the Allied Intelligence in London. Agents from the firm and the aim to observe the apparent connection between स्लोथ्रॉप्स erection and the target of incoming V2 rocket. अच्छा, अब ऐसा है ना कि जब स्लोथ्रॉप छोटा था, उसका बचपन था, तो उसके ऊपर एक्सपेरिमेंट्स किए गए थे बाय हार्वर्ड प्रोफेसर. वो एक्सपेरिमेंट्स ये थे कि स्लोथ्रॉप को कंडीशन किया गया था कोई भी रॉकेट और ऐसी बड़ी आवाज़ से उसको इरेक्शंस होते थे. इरेक्शंस या कंडीशनिंग एक साइकोलॉजी में एक थ्योरी है. इट्स अ पार्ट ऑफ अ थ्योरी कि आप लोगों को एक इन्वायरमेंट के साथ इतना कंडीशन किया जाता है कि अगर कोई ऐसी चीज़ सराउंडिंग्स में हो जाए तो ऑटोमेटिकली दैट थिंग विल हैपन. एग्जाम्पल वंस एक डॉग को कंडीशन किया गया था. जस्ट उसके आगे एक बेल रखी गई थी कि जब भी उस बेल को प्रेस करते थे तो वो सलाइवेट करता था, उसका सलाइवा प्रोड्यूस होता था. तो उसको लगता था कि बस अभी बेल के बाद फूड आ जाएगा. तो उसको ऐसे इन्वायरमेंट में कंडीशन किया गया था. इसी तरह स्लोथ्रॉप को भी कंडीशन किया गया था कि जब भी एक बड़ी आवाज़ वो सुनता था तो उसको इरेक्शंस होते थे. नाउ व्हाट आर इरेक्शंस? व्हेन द मेल सेक्सुअल ऑर्गन अराइजेस. स्लोथ्रॉप पे हार्वर्ड प्रोफेसर ने एक्सपेरिमेंट्स किए थे जो कि जिसकी वजह से ये सब कुछ होता था. नाउ जनरल प्लॉट इसका ये है कि कुछ साइंटिस्ट ये पता करना चाहते थे कि ऐसे स्लोथ्रॉप को कैसे पता लगता है जब इसके आसपास कोई वीडू रॉकेट, मतलब कोई भी ऐसा रॉकेट या मिसाइल या ऐसी बड़ी आवाज़ जब हो जाए, तो स्लोथ्रॉप को कौन सी ऐसी बॉडी में डिफरेंट चीज़ें फील होती थी, जैसे कि कॉज एंड इफ़ेक्ट वाला रिलेशनशिप। व्हाट इफ़ रॉकेट या बड़ी कोई लार्ज एनॉर्मस साउंड होता था, उसकी वजह से कुछ ऐसी चीज़ें हो जाती थी स्लोथ्रॉप की बॉडी में, जो पता लगता था कि इस एरिया में ये चीज़ हो रही है। सो दिस इज़ व्हाट एक्चुअली हैपेंड इन दी नॉवल। ये नॉवल एक कॉमिक नॉवल भी है, और ये वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 के बाद सारा what were the after effects of World War II। और स्लोथ्रॉप बेसिकली इस पूरे प्लॉट में यही सर्च करता रहता है कि इस मेरी पर्सनालिटी के साथ ये क्या होता है, एंड एट लास्ट ही finds the paranoia in his personality. Paranoia is actually when you have a fear of others who control you, like the fear of being controlled by others. In paranoia, slowthrop fears of getting controlled by others, people superior from him in rank, hatred towards the superiority or the authoritative. Paranoid person is a hyper alertness threat to their autonomy. Every person is paranoia या paranoid in the novel. They are megalomaniac. It means when you want superiority over the others, मतलब economic superiority, मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा excess of power जिसकी wish होती है वो. So every character wants supremacy over the other to avoid the paranoia and avoid danger. So coming towards the character Slothrop, so Slothrop was an American lieutenant that worked for Allied intelligence in London. He was described as a womanizer who often had intimate relation with several women. In addition, मतलब Slothrop बहुत ज़्यादा के relations होते थे prostitutes के साथ, women के साथ, और इसी तरह as a child, Slothrop had many experiments conducted on him by Lapsojim, a Harvard professor who had worked for the Nazis. अब स्लोथ्रॉप का ऐसे था कि इस नावल में बताया गया, आई हैव टाइम एंड अगेन आई हैव एक्सप्लेन दिस थिंग, कि इसको कोई भी इतने ज़्यादा एक्सपेरिमेंट्स हुए थे इस पे कि इसको इरेक्शंस कॉज होती थी। तो वो बंदा जिसने इस पे एक्सपेरिमेंट किया था, दैट वाज अ हार्वर्ड प्रोफेसर जैम, who then worked for Nazis as a rocket scientist। तो अब इसने नाजिस के साथ वर्क किया था रॉकेट साइंटिस्ट की तरह, और इसी तरह जब भी कोई रॉकेट आसपास कोई आवाज़ होती थी, बहुत ज़्यादा लाउड नॉइज़ होता था, तो स्लोथ्रॉप पे सेवरल इफ़ेक्ट्स आते थे, लाइक द इरेक्शन। तो पूरे नावल में स्लोथ्रॉप वांटेड टू फाइंड द ट्रूथ अबाउट हिज पर्सनालिटी। इन द होल नावल स्लोथ्रॉप finds the ultimate truth about himself, why these loud noises causes him erections. Slothrop even suffered from identity crisis, steadily worsened as the novel moves onwards. स्लोथ्रॉप को कुछ भी अपनी चाइल्डहुड के बारे में पता नहीं था कि इसके साथ कौन होता था, इसके साथ क्या क्या हुआ है एज एन एक्सपेरिमेंट्स। तो इसको ये चीज़ें, ये सर्च फॉर ट्रूथ कर रहा होता था। And he had a relatively a shallow character. He wore a different clothes and he adopted different identities throughout the novel. He traveled across Europe. He acquired the name as Rocketman and wore a Viking costume. It was eventually revealed that Jamf knew him as Schwarzenegger as well. Finally, Slothrop deteriorates to the extent that his different fragments were unwilling to put together again. His sense of self collapsed, his identity scattered, and he disappeared altogether. So finally, Slothrop gets disappeared. Fragments of Slothrop have grown into consistent persona of their own. The narrator describing the broken fragments of Slothrop which had scattered all over the zone, such as earlier. Coming towards the postmodern paranoia. Paranoia is a mental condition that is characterized by intense suspicion or mistrust of others. A paranoid person is continuously occupied and concerned with the threat of being subjected to external control of his will। मतलब इसका ये है कि basically it's a higher threat to their freedom। ठीक है ना, जो इंसान पैरानॉइड होता है वो हर टाइम सोचता है कि इस
ये मुझ पे हावी ना हो जाए, मुझे कंट्रोल करना ना शुरू कर दे, तो वो डरता है इस बात से. ही इज़ ऑफन हाइपर अलर्ट अबाउट थ्रेट्स टू हिज फ्रीडom. Postmodernist works have been reflected paranoid anxieties in many ways, including distrust of fixity, fear of restrictions, the conviction that society is conspiring against an individual, the multiplication of self made plots to counter the scheming of others, the demolishment of grand narratives, and the upliftment of the multiplicity of truths. अभी बात ये है ना कि इसमें बेसिकली यही बात है कि पोस्ट मॉडर्न पैरानोया बहुत सारे नॉवेल्स लिखे गए हैं जिसमें एक इंसान को रिस्ट्रिक्ट किया जाता है बहुत सारी areas or dimensions of life, say. Even in this novel, Slothrop fears of getting controlled by others. The next thing we have is the literary application of this novel. So, in this novel, many characters have been shown that have troubled life. First, Lothrop had experiments conducted on him by Lasso James, which conditioned his fellows to develop a connection with the V2 missile or the rocket. He resultantly had erections, definitely I've discussed before. This naturally turned his psyche upside down and inflicted long lasting trauma on him. Many characters showed considerable interest in his fellows, monitoring his activities, even attempted to hurt him down. Slothrop consequently developed severe paranoia, where he was cautious of everyone and felt that mysterious forces were acting against him. For instance, स्लोथ्रॉप ने एक लड़की को रेस्क्यू किया था जिसका नाम था कैची फ्रॉम द ऑक्टोपस, और एंड आफ्टर दैट ही रेस्क्यूड हिम. तो इसको लग रहा था स्लोथ्रॉप को कि ये इस पे स्लोथ्रॉप पे स्पाई कर रही है. नॉवल में एक एब्स्ट्रैक्ट कॉन्सेप्ट है दे का जो कि मेंशन किया गया है कि मोस्ट ऑफ द कैरेक्टर्स फेल्ट दैट they were controlled by somebody. So, similarly, Rogers Mexico felt that they controlled his life. The pointsman was considerably paranoid as well. When a rocket strike destroyed white vegetation, pointsman noted that scientists, which included himself, were especially being targeted by the Germans. So, इधर एक देगा concept है, which is the abstract concept.
Coming towards the topic of magical realism, so realism is defined as something that is real in nature, but magical realism means something that is fictitious in the real world. Magical realism is shown through narrative concerning distinct characters in the novel. Firstly, Pirates Pentis had a special ability which allowed him to experience the fantasies and dreams of others. Similarly, Slothrop had a bizarre ability where his erections coincided with the approaching V2 missiles. Mexico himself was considered to have the ability to tell the future, where he simply explained his abilities on the basis of statistical knowledge. These highlighted the aspects of individual perspective in defining the distinction between fantasy and reality. Now, a former insane asylum near London, nicknamed the White Visitation, houses a group of psychic involved in psychological warfare. The Psychops group is also known as by the acronym of PISIS. The staff included a statistician, Roger Mexico, and a behavioralist psychologist named as Edward Pointsman. Pisces research put Slothrop on sodium amytal, which is also known as truth serum, and examined his racial anxieties. Talking about the technical elements of the novel, so it showcased clear departure from the traditional plot structure, therefore emphasizing alignment during the principal traits of magical realism. It even marked with the use of flashbacks and flash forwards. Thomas Pynchon used flash forward techniques to advance the plot forward as well. Lastly, the section of the work showcased fragmented narratives. Even the plot is highly fragmented, and then it exactly ascertaining the climax and the resolution. There came the difficulty in aligning the plot structure of the novel. The concept of the criticism of societal affairs is concerned. So, war novel, which is Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon, is a war novel that discusses the horrors of warfare with the framework of fictional and factual historical accounts.
Now, there are many accounts in the novel where the concept or the narrative accounts are that are covering the violent atrocities mentioned in the novel, the indiscriminate massacre and destroyed cities. So time and again मैंने कहा है वर्ल्ड वॉर टू के बाद की बात की गई है, तो definitely the destruction is mentioned. For instance, while traveling through the zone, Slothrop was forced to sleep in abandoned building. तो ठीक है, where there was no food available. Then we have Lieutenant Wisman entitled himself as Captain Balsaro, meaning it means a death, and was responsible for leading the development of V2 missile under the Nazis. He was also known for the torturing his prisoners. Kane Pockler was forced to work with Wisman because of the fact that his daughter was kept hostage in concentration camp. Finally, the novel discusses the impacts of war, especially on the mentality of the characters. This could be seen through the rivalry between Chicherin and Inzin, who were half brothers, and it was eventually revealed that Chicherin had been conditioned to murder his brother. This reflects the corrupting nature of war, which turned an individual against his own brethren. ये दोनों हाफ ब्रदर्स होते हैं, मतलब सौतेले भाई होते हैं, और सिचुरीन इन जिन को मर्डर करना चाहता है। इसीलिए सोसाइटल अफेयर्स पे ये एक क्रिटिसिज्म है कि वॉर की वजह से लोगों की मेंटालिटी कितनी डिस्टर्ब और डिस्ट्रॉय हो जाती है। एक स्पेसिफिक सर्कमस्टांसेस में या इन्वायरमेंट में इंसान कितना चेंज हो जाता है, ऐसे भी ह्यूमन आर नोन टू बी selfish by nature. Another concept which has been mentioned in the novel is the endless cycle of violence. So, the novel discusses apparently the endless cycle of violence which has consumed humanity. This could be seen in that countless innocents that have been killed in the world wars. However, despite of that conflict and violence and bloodshed, many characters were also concerned with the acquisition of V2 missile. Even the rocket itself has been built as a vengeance weapon, like a revenge weapon. All characters seemed curious about how and why the rockets are launched, but only in the context of the hope as using the weapon for themselves rather than actually resolving the situation in the novel. It was thus entirely uncoincidentally that the novel started with the rocket strike in the London and ended in the shadow of a missile over Francisco. Now, the main concept which has been told in the novel is that everybody is busy in their lives without even solving the situation that is happening around themselves. A screaming comes across the sky, and the first V2 missile strikes on London. Another concept we have is the accumulation of weaponry. So, the topic of war as a capitalist propaganda even can get included in this. The concept of paranoia, as everybody has the constant fear of being controlled by others, and the enhancement of militarization. As mentioned above, the novel emphasizes on the obsession with accumulation of destructive weaponry. First, African rocket technicians worked with Blicerio on the development of V2 rocket. They had been an oppressed group and now intended to acquire power over violence. Secondly, Pointsman worked at White Visitation and believed that Slothrop held the key of understanding the V2 rocket. Thirdly, Major Marby was ordered to assemble V2 missile at the Dora concentration camp. He served in the US military, which showed American interest in acquiring the weapon. The novel hinted towards multinational corporation with ties to the rocket on both sides of the war. Here, they can be interpreted in the context of capitalist war profiteers. Finally, many characters hope to acquire the black device, which they assumed would help them in the missile more destructive, increasing the efficiency or enhancing its accuracy. Ironically, the black device was got fired, which symbolized the idea of the sacrifice of one's humanity itself was necessary for the use of B2 missile.
Overall, it can be stated that the search for the rocket reflected on the real world obsession with nuclear weapons, while not forgetting the idea of a real business of war is buying and selling. The narrator observed the true purpose of warfare, a rocket cartel. The statement was made by the Checherian to describe what he believed was cooperation between Allied forces and former Nazis on the V-2 missiles. Next concept we have is the phallocentrism. So phallocentrism is the concept of the fetus male sexual organ is central to human experience. It is considered the principal element of the organization of social world. Freud extensively worked on the idea and asserted that men were inherently superior to women and declared that women suffered inherently, since they do not possess a feeling. The exact term was coined by Alfred Jonas, a close friend of Freud. Later onwards, feminists picked the term to articulate the experience of living in a patriarchy society, especially with the reference to its obsession with the male view, like the male patriarchy society. The literal application in the postmodernism world, the phallocentrism has been extensively challenged as a grand narrative. This can be notably seen in Gravity's Rainbow, where the concept has been inverted and the phallus has appeared as a negative construct. Firstly, SLOTHROP is shown to be conditioned, which results him in having erections with the consigned with V2 rocket. This proves that the phallus can be conditioned and shaped in any manner. It thereby means that there is no inherent power associated with the phallus. Thereon, the correlation between the erections of the phallus and incoming of the V2 missile symbolizes the destructive potential of the phallus. Lastly, it is significant that it symbolizes the removal of phallus and any notion of phallocentrism from men. A 50-foot of phallic symbol is the description of the V2 missile by one of the characters. So this was the end of my video. I hope you people understood what I have made you people study in this video about the novel. This novel is itself termed as the most difficult novel, and I hope you people have understood it. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe and share. Kindly hit the